Hey guys, it's Extreme Zero here again, and today I am bringing you another talking point video. And today I'm going to basically be discussing how Nintendo has broken their silence after a really long time of basically saying little to nothing at all. They have now opened up as they usually do and have given us quite a few announcements. And you know, it's weird because I was actually going to do a video about this last week, but see what happened. I had written a blog post on N4G saying how it was getting kind of annoying how Nintendo didn't seem to really want to open up. They didn't seem to want to say anything because they've been silent for so long. It seems like a lot of their focus was on the 3DS, but the Wii U on the other hand, they were being all hush-hush about it for quite some time now. And then, almost out of the blue, they just came out and delivered a random video. It was a complete stealth release, a random video announcing their plans for E3 2014, which is going to be next month. And they collaborated with N64, came up with this really intriguing, rather weird video featuring Reggie Fils-Aimé, mech, delivering their plans for E3 2014. And when I watched it, I was like, oh my goodness, it's like, wonder if someone at Nintendo read my blog post. Yeah, I know, that my blog post had nothing to do with it, but it's just so weird how the minute I decided to write a blog post about it, just a few days later, they actually come out and do it, and it was pretty good. And it was a very short video, but it told us exactly what they intend to do. And Nintendo has once again decided to be Nintendo and do something completely different from what the traditional or the usual way is, you know, what the crowd's doing. E3 is all about, you know, the press conferences, you know, seeing the big companies like Sony, Microsoft, Ubisoft, Activision, EA come up on stage and delivering their news to us by means of a press conference. They come up and they do demonstrations. We have guys from PR, from the respective PR departments, come and talk to the audience, and of course developers as well, giving information about their games. But Nintendo has decided to do something different yet again. As we saw last year, instead of doing the traditional press conference, Nintendo opted to do something rather different. Instead, they used their Nintendo Direct platform to deliver the news to their fans. And it was a relatively good Nintendo Direct. You know, that's where we got our look at Wind Waker HD and Super Mario 3D World and Mario Kart 8. And a lot of other announcements were made. That's where we also got our new trailer for like X and Bayonetta 2. So it wasn't a bad Direct at all. But a lot of people were really disappointed as to how they decided to go ahead and do a Nintendo Direct instead of a normal press conference. Now last year was understandable, and it was understandable because, let's face it, they were not in the same position that Sony and Microsoft were last year. Sony and Microsoft were on the brink of announcing to us their two new systems. We hadn't seen the Xbox One yet, so that was the Xbox One's big reveal. And for Sony, even though they had their PlayStation 4 event back in February, no one had seen the actual console yet. So this was the big reveal. This is where they really take the cloth off and show us exactly what it was. So either way, Nintendo was not in the same position. Unlike Sony and Microsoft, they were not unveiling new hardware. They were just showing off their brand new games for the year. So I'm guessing that's why they decided to do Nintendo Direct, even though they were still at E3. Regardless, they were on the show floor. They had a small demonstration for the press, where they got to talk to developers, interact with the developers, and the developers talk to the press about their games. But now this year, Nintendo has decided to follow up on that. They're once again not doing a press conference. They're gotta be different. That's what they're all about. Once again opted not to do a press conference in favor of doing something bigger, the what they did last year. And so this year they're calling it the Play Nintendo at E3 2014 event. And it's going to be basically separated into about 4 major parts. It's going to start on the 10th of June this year, beginning of E3, 9 a.m. Pacific time, calling it the Nintendo Digital Event. And that's basically, they're going to show us what they're making an announcement of what they plan to do this year and beyond for the Wii U and 3DS, and who knows, maybe even their quality of life platform that they talked about back at the very beginning of this year. Now, part 1 is they're gonna have footage live from the Nintendo Treehouse. The Nintendo Treehouse team is going to give us an in-depth look at some of Nintendo's hottest games at E3. So they're gonna have game experts for game demos and much more, and they're gonna be live streaming directly from Nintendo's show floor all throughout E3. So that's gonna be their way of giving us the news. And then they're also having a Smash Brothers Invitational event where they're going to invite 16 highly skilled Super Smash Brothers players to take each other on the first ever Nintendo sponsored Super Smash Brothers tournament, and that's going to be live at E3. We're going to be able to watch it through the webcast, and they're going to be playing the Wii U version of the brand new Super Smash Brothers, which is set to release later this year. And then they're also bringing Super Smash Brothers, and this is probably a really big deal, going to be probably the biggest deal, the Super Smash Brothers Smash Fest at Best Buy. Just like last year where they brought their E3 titles to Best Buy to allow the public to play, because the public is not allowed at E3. You need to be a member of the press. So they've now decided to once again team up with Best Buy to bring this time Super Smash Brothers, the Wii U version, to major Best Buys throughout the country, where the public will be able to get a crack at it before it's officially released sometime later this year. And this is definitely going to be a big deal because, come on, let's be real here, Smash Brothers is one of Nintendo's biggest franchises. People go nuts for Smash Brothers, so when they see this at Best Buy, they're going to be like, oh my goodness, I really need to get on that. That's exactly what they're planning to do. So this is definitely good for Nintendo. It's a good move. It's a smart move. A lot of people have, railed on them now for once again opting not to do a traditional press conference. People are saying that this is Nintendo showing that they don't want to compete, or that they can't compete with Sony or Microsoft, that they're cowards, that they really don't have anything to show. That's why they're not going through all the trouble of doing the press conference. And I'd say that really doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, because Nintendo always has ace cards up their sleeves. They're very, very quiet for most of the time, but every time they have some big news to announce, they open up and they show us exactly what's going on. And every time they do it, it rocks the boat. Really, it does. And so what Nintendo is doing here is they know that they are being unfairly treated as it relates to sharing the spotlight with Microsoft and Sony. You go on any major gaming website, unless it's pro Nintendo, usually the Nintendo section is not only listed as the last section, but it's also the section with the least amount of coverage. Most of the popular articles, they're going to deal with either Microsoft or Sony, and usually it's Sony. And if it's Microsoft, it's probably some kind of bad news or some type of news about Resolution Gate or something like that. But the Nintendo sections are always the ones that have the least amount of coverage and that get the least amount of attention from viewers, which is, well, to be expected, I guess, because the gamer community is so fickle as it comes to Nintendo. And like big places like IGN, for instance, they don't really do much coverage on Nintendo compared to how much coverage they do on Sony and Microsoft. If Sony were to announce that they laid off one member, that would make a news article. But if Nintendo were to announce that they hired 1,000 new members, that'll probably take about a couple of hours or maybe a day before IGN to report on it. And I'm just using that as an example as to how unfairly Nintendo is treated. And Nintendo knows this, and Nintendo knows that, E3 is the biggest gaming event each and every year. This is where most of the major announcements from all the major publishers, all the major developers, this is where all the major announcements are made. So Nintendo knows that Microsoft and Sony are going to get some major spotlight here. They're going to get some major showtime. So they're like, well, the press aren't going to pay that much attention to us. We know that. So what are we going to do? We're just going to do the news ourselves. We're going to give our fans, the ones who really care, a chance to look at what we have. So I'm guessing that's why they're not opting to do the traditional press conference, because they're not into that. They want to have control over the content that they display, and they want coverage to be given, equal share. So they're just basically doing it themselves. It's up to the press as to how much of it they want to give out, but the public is now going to know exactly what's happening and not have to rely on the press. Nintendo is going to be delivering all the information, all the news themselves. So like I said, people have, railed on Nintendo for this, like, why are you doing this? Why are you going against the status quo? And, well, I don't see how it makes much of a difference. Let's be real here. It's not like every Tom, Dick, and Harry who owns a console or is planning to buy a console is actually knows about or even cares about E3. The people who care about E3, the people who tune into it through the live streams, the people who go on news sites to read about it, are gamers. Like, I'm talking about full hardcore gamers. They're the ones who care about all the new news. But, your soccer moms out there and all the casual players out there who are also buying the consoles, for the next Call of Duty or the next Just Dance or the next Skylanders, they're not checking for something like E3. So the people who actually do check for E3, the people who actually do care about E3, are the gamers. And how do the gamers get their information from E3? Oh my gosh. Through the internet. Wow. So tell me, how much of a difference does it make if Nintendo is doing the press conference or not? Either way, gamers gonna get the exact same information, regardless of if they were doing the press conference in the first place. They still have to come on the internet and watch the press conference, whether it's through a live stream or through the YouTube re-upload. Regardless, they're just going to be watching it through a video format anyway. The only people who do not benefit from Nintendo not having a press conference are the press who would actually be attending E3 and would actually have access to the press conference in the first place. And the main thing here as to why so many journalists are angry about this is because now that equals less traffic for their website, because some journalists get exclusive access to things, they get exclusive access to footage, they get exclusive access to details. And you can only go to their websites, you can only visit their news media in order to get that information. And so it sucks for them now because Nintendo is saying, okay, it's everyone's game. Everyone gets to know what we're doing. Everyone's going to know what we're doing because everyone's going to have access to it. They're not having a press conference. This is a completely open event for them because they're going to be delivering it through the internet, and everyone who cares about it will be able to access it at any given time through E3 and see what Nintendo has in store. So I personally don't mind the new format, and it should be interesting because they have obviously reskinned it from last year. This is not Nintendo Direct at E3. This is the Nintendo Digital event. So that means that it's probably going to be a little bit bigger than what we saw last year. It's probably going to be a little bit more elaborate. And certainly I don't have much complaints about it at all. Because let's be honest, E3 press conferences, they're about an hour, approximately an hour, and most of it is just filler information. You have, these PR guys all smiling and talking, and it gets old. The only real good parts about it are when, that major game is revealed, and you hear the crowd, start cheering and jeering and things like that. Other times it's just full of awkward moments, terrible celebrity actors or child actors, and glitches. We've seen it where the game would crash in the middle of the gameplay. We've seen it where the game wouldn't even start. We've seen so many glitches at E3, things are bound to happen. So now with Nintendo, it looks like they are having a more controlled environment. It's probably going to be rehearsed, which means that it's going to be less margin for error. So indeed, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what's going to happen, because Nintendo always finds new things to show us. They always find new things to show us, and it's always a big deal. What we do know is that Zelda is most likely going to make some kind of an appearance at this event, because Anuma here basically confirmed that the next Zelda game would be shown off at this year's E3. As to exactly how it's going to be shown off, whether we're going to see actual gameplay, we don't know that yet, but it should certainly be really amazing to see what the next Zelda looks like. We also should expect to hear more information about Bayonetta 2. We haven't heard about that for quite a while now. Expect to get new information on Monolith's X. Have heard barely anything on that. And titles that were announced over a year ago, which have literally not been talked about at all. Shin Megami Tensei x Fire Emblem. We know nothing about that. We only have a teaser trailer. That's the only information that we have. We should expect to see that. Yarn Yoshi, once again, haven't heard anything, haven't seen anything other than a few gameplay clips with no audio and a few screenshots. So we should expect to hear some new information about that. Hyrule Warriors, which was announced back in Nintendo's December Direct. We haven't heard anything about it from since then. We should expect to see what it looks like now, and of course get the final name for it, because Hyrule Warriors is only a temporary name. And of course we should also expect some new announcements. Who knows, maybe we might get a new Metroid. Maybe a next major Mario game might be coming out. Who knows what Nintendo has in store, only they know. And don't forget Miyamoto's new IP. We don't know anything about it at all, so it should be interesting to see exactly what that's all about. So Nintendo obviously has quite a bit of information that they want to share with us. They obviously want this to be a pretty big deal. That's why they're going through all this trouble. Because as to why they're not doing a traditional press conference this year, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they thought that last year was a success for them, and now they want to make it even more of a success. So it should be interesting to see how this turns out. It should be interesting to see what kind of information they'll be giving us, and how good it's going to be, the entire event, if it's going to go smoothly as they would hope so. So, let's see what happens. Alright guys, I want to thank you for watching another one of my talking point videos. Once again, these are videos that are made for feedback, so drop a comment below, tell me what you think. Once again, thanks for watching, and continue to have a great day, and keep on gaming. Extremizer, signing off.